I'd been hauling freight for nearly 15 years, and fatigue was nothing new to me. You get used to pushing your body past its limits, chugging bad coffee at midnight, chewing gum until your jaw aches just to stay awake, singing along with static-filled radio stations to keep the mind sharp. But that night on Route 16 was different. It was late, close to 2 a.m., and the highway was dead quiet. No taillights ahead, no headlights behind. Just the hum of my rig eating up miles of asphalt. My eyes burned, and every blink felt like it lingered too long. When a green reflective sign appeared up ahead with blocky white letters that read, "Rest area, 1 mile." I could have sworn I almost sighed in relief. A quick stop, maybe stretch my legs, grab something from the vending machines, and crash for a couple of hours before the next delivery. The exit ramp curved sharply, dipping into a patch of fog that seemed too thick for such a dry night. My headlights cut through it just enough to reveal the familiar layout of a rest area. A long row of parking slots, a squat cement building that served as restrooms, and a cluster of buzzing orange lights hanging over vending machines. I counted 3 cars parked in the lot, and what looked like a pickup with a tarp pulled over its bed. It wasn't welcoming exactly, but it was normal. Normal enough. I shut down my engine, grabbed a few bills from my wallet, and climbed out. The air felt heavier than usual, damp with that smell you only notice in forgotten places, like wet concrete mixed with mildew. There was no wind, no hum of insects, no distant roar of highway tires, just silence. I shook it off and walked toward the vending machines. My boots echoed strangely against the pavement, each step sounding louder than it should have. The machines hummed and flickered under their buzzing lights. I bought a bag of chips and a soda, but when I bent to grab my snack, I froze. Scratched into the side of one of the vending machines were words, carved deep with something sharp. "Don't stay past dawn." I swallowed hard, told myself it was just kids messing around, and forced a laugh that fell flat in the heavy air. The restroom building loomed nearby, dimly lit by a single fluorescent bulb that flickered like it was about to die. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me instantly. Stale, damp, metallic. The kind of smell you can't quite place but makes your stomach tighten. The tiles were cracked, and the mirror above the sinks was so smeared with grime I couldn't see my reflection clearly. But the strangest thing, someone had written something on the mirror with soap. The letters were faint, but I could still read them. They never left. My skin prickled. I didn't stick around. I went back to my truck, climbed into the sleeper cab, and shut the curtains. For a while, I just lay there listening. The silence pressed down harder than sleep ever could. I thought I heard footsteps once, soft, dragging across gravel. But when I peeked through the curtain, the lot was empty except for the same cars and that tarp-covered pickup. Eventually, exhaustion won. My eyelids dropped and I drifted off. When I woke, sunlight poured through the cracks in the curtain. I groaned, stretched, and reached for the soda I'd left on the dash. That's when the wrongness hit me. The lot was empty. Not just empty, gone. I stumbled outside barefoot and froze. My 18-wheeler sat tilted on uneven ground, not pavement. Dirt and grass stretched out where the rest area had been. No vending machines, no restroom building, no orange lights buzzing in the mist. The cars and the tarp-covered truck had vanished. I ran up the hill to where the exit ramp had been, but there was nothing. Just the smooth, uninterrupted flow of Route 16. No break in the guardrail, no signs, no ramp. It was as if the place had never existed. I was still standing there in shock when another trucker pulled over on the shoulder. He leaned out his window, giving me a look like I'd lost my mind. "You okay, buddy?" he asked. I pointed behind me, stammering about the rest stop, about sleeping there. about the vending machines. His face paled a little. He shook his head. "There hasn't been a rest area on this stretch in 20 years, he said flatly. "They tore it down after a driver was found dead inside the bathroom. Real bad one. Folks said the place was cursed. They bulldozed it." I tried to argue, but the words died in my throat, because deep down I knew he wasn't lying. And to this day, whenever I pass that mile marker, I keep my eyes straight ahead. I don't slow down, don't look to the shoulder, don't risk seeing something waiting in the fog, because I know what I saw. I know where I slept, and I know I was never supposed to leave. Tom had been driving trucks for 20 years, and he thought he had learned every trick the road could play on a tired driver. Mirages shimmering across hot asphalt, deer darting out of nowhere, the mind making shapes out of shadows during endless night runs. But nothing, not fatigue, not stress, not isolation, prepared him for the night he encountered what other drivers whispered about in hushed tones: the Endless Convoy. It was just past midnight, somewhere along Interstate 50, that long stretch they call the loneliest road in America. The sky was wide and empty, a pale strip of moonlight breaking through the clouds, casting a silver glow over the desert. Tom's rig was the only sound for miles, humming steadily along the black ribbon of highway. His CB radio had gone quiet hours ago. Not even static, just silence. Then he saw them. Two headlights in his mirror, tiny at first, then growing closer. Tom expected a car to roar past him, but the light stayed right behind him. Not too close, not far, just at a perfect, unnerving distance, matching his every move. He adjusted his speed, slowing to 55. The light slowed too. He sped up to nearly 70. The light sped up, always in step like a shadow he couldn't shake. At first he told himself it was nothing. Maybe another trucker being cautious, letting him lead. But something about the silence felt wrong. Most truckers gave a friendly call on the CB. "Mind if I tuck in behind you?" Or, "I'll ride your taillights till the next stop." But no voice came, just static, just... He clicked his mic again. "Breaker 19, you got your ears on? Who's riding my tail?" Nothing. Static. His gut tightened. After 10 miles, his patience snapped. He pulled into a gravel turnout, the kind of emergency stop used only for breakdowns. Dust swirled around his headlights as his rig came to a halt. The car behind him slowed too, pulling off just a short distance back. Tom's chest tightened. They weren't passing. They weren't leaving. Whoever it was, they wanted him to stop. He climbed out, the desert night pressing cold against his skin. The silence was so heavy it rang in his ears. Gravel crunched under his boots as he turned back toward the car. But there was no car. No headlights. Just empty blacktop stretching out endlessly flat and bare. His pulse hammered. He scanned the desert, sweeping his flashlight across the scrub and rocks. Nothing. Just the whisper of wind moving across sand. His rig sat alone, hulking against the horizon. The space where the other vehicle should have been was pure emptiness. He muttered under his breath, "I'm too damn tired." Losing it. He climbed back inside, slammed the door, and locked it. He drove on, another 20 miles. His eyes darted to the mirror every few seconds, and every time it was the same. Black sky, empty road, until it wasn't. The headlights were back. Twin beams burning in his mirrors, glaring white, closer this time. Tom's stomach dropped. He gripped the wheel, beads of sweat forming on his temple. "Not again," he whispered. The lights never wavered, never swerved, never drew closer or farther, just locked on his rear bumper like a predator stalking its prey. Tom reached for his phone, fumbling to record proof. He flipped to the camera, aimed it at the mirror, and nothing. On the screen, the road was empty, no headlights. But when he lowered the phone, they were still there, blazing bright in the mirror. He tried again, switching apps, adjusting the angle. Each time the result was the same. His eyes saw headlights, his phone saw only darkness. The convoy lasted the entire night. No matter how far he drove, no matter how many turnouts he tried, the lights returned. Sometimes they were right behind him. Sometimes they vanished for an hour, lulling him into false relief, only to blaze back into his mirror when he least expected it. At one point, he thought he saw not just one set of lights, but 3, then 4. A whole line of vehicles stretching into the night, silent, following him. When dawn finally broke, washing the desert in pale pink light, the headlights blinked out, gone in an instant. The road behind him stretched empty to the horizon, nothing but asphalt shimmering in the morning sun. Tom pulled into the next truck stop, pale, shaking. He stumbled inside, ordered coffee, and sat staring at the table. Another driver, older with gray hair under his cap, sat across from him without asking. "You saw them, didn't you?" the man said quietly. Tom looked up, startled. "Saw what?" "The convoy." The old man's eyes were flat, tired. "Been around longer than any of us. Trucks that wrecked out here, drivers that never made it home. They ride the night roads, find one of us, stick to us. Sometimes they even take us." Tom's hands trembled around his mug. "Why me?" The old man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because you were alone. They follow the lonely ones." Tom never drove Interstate 50 again. Even now, years later, when he closes his eyes at night, he swears he can still see those headlights burning in his mirror. Not cars, not trucks, just lights, following, waiting. And he knows one day when he's tired enough, when he's too far from home, when he's too alone on the road, those lights might not stop at just following. A legend. Jack had always loved the road, even when it scared him. After 20 years of hauling freight across the country, he thought he'd learn to handle anything. Mountain blizzards, dead quiet desert highways, even the hallucinations that creep in when exhaustion sinks its claws too deep. But the night he saw the phantom semi, he realized the road still held horrors he couldn't explain. It was mid-January when his dispatcher sent him on a run through the Rockies. The snow had stopped earlier in the evening, but the air was razor-sharp cold, the kind that makes your breath sting your lungs. The asphalt glistened under the moon, slick with hidden ice. Jack's rig groaned with the climb, chains rattling on his tires as he crawled through the mountain pass. The CB had gone silent hours ago. No chatter, no background static, nothing. Just him, his truck, and the low hum of tires against frozen pavement. Then came the headlights. At first they were faint, a pair of pale dots cresting the ridge behind him. He didn't think much of it. Another trucker maybe, or some late-night traveler braving the mountain road. But the closer they drew, the more wrong they looked. Too wide apart, too high off the ground. Exactly like the headlights of another semi. Jack adjusted his mirror and watched as the truck settled in right behind him. Relief flickered through him for a moment. Company on this lonely road wasn't such a bad thing. He tapped his signal, flashed his brights, the universal trucker code. Safe to pass. The other rig didn't move. It stayed locked on his bumper, close enough that its lights blinded him, the glare cutting into his mirrors and stinging his eyes. Jack frowned and picked up his CB mic. "Back door, you got your ears on? You riding me all night, or you gonna pass?" Static hissed, nothing else. He tried again, voice sharper. "Breaker 19, talk to me, driver." The radio stayed dead. A cold unease began to settle in Jack's gut. Truckers weren't usually shy. Even the cranky ones would at least grunt back. Whoever was behind him wasn't speaking. He pressed harder on the gas, his tack climbing as his rig strained up the incline. The headlights followed, never wavering. He eased back down, letting his truck crawl. The headlights matched perfectly, always keeping the same distance. That's when the fear really hit him. On a long straightaway, Jack pulled into a wide shoulder, snow crunching beneath his tires as he braked hard. His rig shuddered to a stop. He expected the semi to roar past him, maybe throw a blast of its air horn. Instead, the headlights slowed too, and then blinked out. Jack's chest seized. He stared into his mirror, blinking hard. No headlights, no taillights, no reflection of chrome, just empty black road stretching behind him. Hands trembling, he climbed down from his cab. The cold slammed into him instantly, a burning wind cutting across the ridge. He pulled his coat tighter and turned his flashlight down the highway. Nothing. Not a single set of tire tracks in the fresh powder behind him. But he had seen them. He knew he had. He climbed back into the cab, heart pounding, and forced himself onward. For an hour, the road remained empty, silent. Slowly, he began to convince himself he'd imagined it. Fatigue. Stress. A trick of the snow and moonlight. Until the headlights returned. They didn't creep up this time. They snapped into his mirror as though they'd never left. Twin beams blinding white, locked onto him, closer than before. He swore he could feel heat off them, as though the truck was nearly touching his trailer doors. Jack gripped the wheel, sweat slicking his palms. His CB crackled suddenly, faint static rising. His stomach lurched in relief until he realized there was no voice. Just a low hiss, like someone breathing directly into the channel. His jaw clenched. "Who the hell are you?" He barked into the mic. No reply. The lights surged closer. His rig shook violently as though struck by a gust of wind, though the night air was perfectly still. Jack swerved, heart hammering, expecting impact. But the headlights never touched him. They just hung there, impossibly close, burning holes into his mirror. And then gone again, vanished without a trace. By the time dawn bled across the peaks, Jack's nerves were shredded. He rolled into a truck stop, pale, trembling. He staggered inside, ordered a coffee he barely touched, and sat staring at his hands. That's when one of the older drivers approached. His hair was steel gray, his hands thick and scarred. He slid into the booth without asking. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the old man said. Jack forced a laugh, brittle and weak. "Maybe I have. Thought I was being tailgated all night by a rig that wasn't there." The old man's eyes darkened. "Where?" Jack hesitated, then whispered the mile marker. The man leaned back slowly as if Jack had confirmed something he already knew. "You saw him. The phantom semi." Jack shook his head. "That's just stories." The old driver's voice dropped. "No story. There was a wreck on that stretch years ago. Truck jackknifed on the ice, took out 3 cars. Everyone burned in the fire, including the driver. They cleared the wreckage, but he never left. Some say his truck still runs the mountain at night, follows anyone unlucky enough to be alone. Sometimes he just rides your bumper. Other times..." The man trailed off, staring at his untouched plate. "Other times, drivers disappear, just like he did." Jack didn't respond. He couldn't. He sat there in silence, the words sinking like lead in his stomach. He didn't tell anyone else what he'd seen. Didn't want to. But even now, years later, when he runs mountain roads at night, he finds his eyes darting to the mirrors more than the windshield. And sometimes when the road is quiet and the CB is dead, he swears he sees those lights again, blazing white, too close to escape. He prays they're just a trick of the eyes, because deep down he knows the phantom semi is still out there. And one night, when he's too tired, when his guard slips, it won't just follow. It'll take him with it. Every trucker knows the feeling of loneliness on the road. The hours drag on, the darkness swallows the horizon, and the silence presses down until even the hum of your own engine feels deafening. That's when you lean on the radio. A crackling AM station, a fuzzy country ballad, or even just the chatter of other truckers on the CB. Anything to remind you that you're not completely alone. But sometimes, the radio speaks when it shouldn't. Rick had been hauling freight across the Midwest one late October night. The fog was thick, the kind that turns headlights into weak yellow orbs and swallows the road whole. The CB had been eerily quiet for hours, no chatter, not even the static bursts that usually pop in and out. The silence gnawed at him, so he reached over to spin the AM dial. He flicked through station after station, country, preachers shouting into the void, static, then he froze. It was faint at first. A slow, warped melody like jazz from the 1940s bleeding through a cracked phonograph. A woman's voice sang low and mournful, the notes dragging unnaturally, as though the record was melting. The sound carried a weight to it, like grief soaked into every note. Rick frowned, squinting at the display. 101.3 FM. He blinked. That frequency didn't exist. He'd scanned that range dozens of times before. Out here in the fog, you were lucky to get anything at all. Yet, there it was, playing as clear as if someone was sitting in his cab with an old turntable. He listened, transfixed as the song crackled on. Then without warning, the music cut off. The static deepened, hissing like breath against glass. And then a voice whispered, "Rick." His chest tightened, his hands locked on the wheel. He glanced at the radio, then at the passenger seat, half expecting someone to be sitting there. Empty, he muttered, must have misheard, just static. But the voice came again, clearer this time. "You shouldn't be out here, Rick." The blood drained from his face. He felt his scalp prickle beneath his cap. It had said his name. He reached for the knob, turning hard. It didn't move. He yanked at it, hit the power button. The light didn't dim. The radio stayed locked on 101.3, the static thick, the whisper weaving through it like something alive. "Turn back before it's too late." Rick swallowed hard. He pressed the CB mic. "Breaker, anyone out here? You hearing this on 101.3? Please tell me this isn't just me." The CB hissed, then went silent. That's when the breathing started, slow, heavy, wet, as though someone was right there with him, pressed against the mic. The sound filled the cab, pushing into every corner. Rick's own breath quickened, fogging the windshield slightly in the cold. He muttered, "This isn't funny, whoever you are, quit it." Then laughter spilled through the speakers, high-pitched, a child's giggle, warped and broken, echoing as though played backward on a tape. Rick's pulse spiked. He slammed his hand against the power button. Nothing. He pulled the fuse, ripped the wires free. Still the static hissed, still the laughter bled into the cab. The dashboard lights flickered, casting the inside of the truck in sickly green glows. Rick glanced at the passenger seat again, and froze. A shape sat slumped there, pale, hollow-eyed. Its lips curled in a silent grin, though its chest didn't rise or fall. He blinked once, and it was gone. But the whisper returned. "Look behind you." Rick's throat went dry. He flicked his eyes to the mirror. A convoy of headlights blazed behind him. Not one truck, but 5, 6. A line stretching into the fog. His pulse pounded as the lights gained ground, roaring closer. He gritted his teeth, bracing for impact, then blinked. The lights were gone. The road stretched empty and endless behind him. The radio hissed softly, then whispered again, almost amused. Not yet. By dawn, Rick was trembling. The radio finally died as the first light broke across the horizon, leaving his cab in heavy silence. He pulled into a truck stop, pale and hollow-eyed. He ordered coffee, but his hands shook too badly to drink. He told a few other drivers about it later, voice trembling. Most just laughed, told him he needed rest. But one old-timer leaned close, his eyes grim. "You found the station," he said softly. "I did too, years ago, out in the fog, midnight to dawn only. It plays for those who are alone." Rick licked his lips. What happens if you keep listening?" The old-timer stared at his cup for a long time before answering. "You stop being the one listening. You start being the one talking." Rick never touched the AM dial again. But even years later, when the fog rolls thick across an empty highway and the CB goes dead silent, he swears he hears it. That faint hiss of static, that slow, warped jazz tune. And if he doesn't change the channel fast enough, the whisper still knows his name. Truckers like to say the road is alive. It breathes with the weather, whispers with the wind, and hides things in its shadows that no sane man should see. Spend enough years behind the wheel, and you'll eventually run into something you can't explain. For Sam, that moment came during a stormy night on Route 322 in Pennsylvania. An encounter that would leave him questioning every rainy drive for the rest of his life. It had been raining since dusk, not a light drizzle, but sheets of pounding rain that turned the road into a black mirror, reflecting back the yellow glare of his headlights. The wipers worked overtime, squeaking rhythmically as thunder rolled across the dark hills. His CB had been silent for hours. No chatter, no check-ins. Just him, the storm, and the endless highway. Around midnight, he spotted something through the downpour. At first, it looked like a road sign, but as he drew closer, his chest tightened. It was a man, tall, thin, standing at the edge of the shoulder. He wore a yellow raincoat with the hood pulled low, hands hanging at his sides. He didn't move, didn't wave for help, just stood there as if waiting. Sam instinctively slowed, his heart thudding. Out here in the middle of nowhere, it wasn't uncommon to find a stranded driver or someone in trouble. But as his rig's headlights swept over the figure, Sam's knuckles went white. The raincoat was bone dry. Sam's mind raced. How could it be dry in this storm? Rain pelted the road like bullets, but the man's coat gleamed untouched, as if wrapped in invisible glass. As Sam passed, the figure lifted his head. A pale, drowned-looking face stared back at him, skin chalk white, lips bluish, and eyes like deep black pits. The man didn't blink. He didn't breathe. Sam's gut clenched. He forced his eyes forward, pressing on the accelerator. But when he glanced in his mirror, his stomach dropped. The hitchhiker was gone. And when Sam looked back to the passenger seat, his breath caught in his throat. The man in the raincoat was sitting right beside him. Sam nearly lost control of the truck. The semi swerved hard, tires screeching against the slick asphalt. He yanked the wheel, correcting, his breath ragged and shallow. The figure didn't move. It sat perfectly still, head bowed slightly, water dripping onto the seat except the raincoat wasn't wet. Gathering his courage, Sam whispered, "Who the hell are you?" The figure slowly turned its head toward him. The movement was stiff, unnatural, like bones grinding together. Its lips curled back, revealing gray, uneven teeth. And then it spoke. Its voice was low, bubbling as though water filled its lungs. "You shouldn't have passed me by." Sam's blood turned cold. His hand shot to the CB mic, voice trembling. "Breaker, anyone out there, I got a problem in my cab. Anyone, please." The CB crackled with static. Then the same voice came through the speaker. "There's no one else out here." Sam dropped the mic, his chest heaving. His truck's dashboard lights flickered. The engine sputtered, coughing like it was drowning too. The figure leaned closer. Its breath smelled of stagnant water. "Turn back," it whispered. "The river's rising." Panic surged through Sam. He floored the accelerator, determined to reach the next truck stop. Rain hammered the windshield. Thunder boomed, but the figure just sat there, silent, watching. Every so often, Sam swore he saw its reflection in the windshield, eyes blacker than night, lips curling as though amused. Mile after mile dragged on, until at last he saw the faint glow of a 24-hour diner. Relief hit him like a flood. He pulled into the lot, slamming the brakes. He turned to the seat beside him. Empty. The hitchhiker was gone. Sam bolted into the diner, soaked instantly by the rain. Inside, the warmth of frying food and neon lights felt unreal. He ordered a coffee, hands still shaking. The waitress, a kindly older woman, raised her eyebrows. "You look like you've seen a ghost, honey." Sam laughed weakly. "Maybe I have. Saw a man out on the road, yellow raincoat, pale face. Thought he swallowed. Thought he climbed into my cab." The woman froze. Her smile faltered. "You saw him?" she asked quietly. Sam frowned. "You've heard of this before?" She leaned in close, voice hushed. "That stretch of road runs over a river valley. About 20 years ago, a flash flood washed out the bridge. A carload of people died, and so did a trucker who stopped to help. They say one of the men was wearing a yellow raincoat, drowned before anyone could reach him." Sam's stomach turned. "And now he, what, waits for drivers?" The waitress nodded grimly. "Every storm. Some drivers say he just rides along, silent as the grave. But others..." She trailed off, eyes darkening. "Others say he doesn't let them leave. They vanish before sunrise. Folks find their rigs later, empty. Doors locked from the inside." Sam barely touched his coffee. He drove the rest of his route with the radio off, eyes glued to the mirrors. And for the rest of his career, every time the rain came down in sheets, he felt the same knot in his gut. His eyes would flick to the shoulder, terrified of spotting that yellow silhouette again. Because he knew if the hitchhiker ever climbed into his cab a second time, he might not make it to the next truck stop. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.